I never thought one careless moment could destroy everything I had. It happened in the middle of a simple argument, nothing unusual, nothing that should have changed the course of our lives. But that night, my frustration boiled over, and I blurted out the words that would shatter my marriage. "I don't need you, David." The second those words left my mouth, the air grew heavy. My husband didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw back accusations. He just stood there, staring at me with eyes that no longer recognized the woman in front of him. I expected anger. I expected a fight. I expected him to slam the door and return once his temper cooled. Instead, he moved quietly, gathering a small bag without a word. With calm that was more terrifying than rage, he looked at me one last time and said, "If I'm not needed here, maybe I shouldn't stay." And then he walked out. No second chances. No pause at the doorway. No looking back. The silence he left behind was deafening. A silence that would haunt me, reminding me of the moment I let my pride speak louder than my heart.
My name was Anna, and long before that night when everything fell apart, I thought I had the perfect love story. I first met David on a rainy afternoon in the campus library. I was rushing, juggling books and coffee, too caught up in my own whirlwind of ambitions to notice where I was going. One clumsy step, and the coffee slipped from my hands, spilling dangerously close to my notes. Before I could even react, someone caught the cup midair. Steady hands, calm eyes. That was David. He wasn't the kind of man who stood out in a crowd. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. But there was something in his quiet presence that pulled me in. While I thrived on chaos, chasing deadlines and dreaming of big adventures, he was grounded, calm, and unshakably patient. It didn't take long before we were inseparable. He balanced me in ways I didn't even know I needed. Where I was restless, he was steady. Where I rushed, he slowed me down. With him, even the simplest moments felt meaningful. Long walks under streetlights, late-night talks about our future, laughter over burnt dinners. When David proposed, it wasn't in some grand, dramatic gesture. He simply held my hand one evening on a quiet park bench and asked, "Will you let me be your safe place for the rest of our lives?" I said yes without hesitation. Back then, I believed our differences were our strength. I believed his steadiness would always be my anchor. And for a while it was true. Our love was strong, our bond unshakable. Or at least, that's what I thought. The first years of our marriage felt like living inside a dream. Everything seemed to fall into place effortlessly, as if life itself had been waiting for us to come together. David and I were a team in every sense of the word. He believed in my big ideas, no matter how unrealistic they sounded. When I talked about starting my own business, he was the one who stayed up with me at midnight, helping me draft plans, even though he had to wake up early for work. He never once told me my dreams were too much. Instead, he reminded me that I was capable of anything. And I gave him the same in return. David wasn't ambitious in the way I was, but he had his quiet passions. Woodworking, gardening, little hobbies that most people wouldn't think twice about. I made sure he knew they mattered. I proudly showed off his handmade shelves to anyone who visited, and I helped him plant his first small garden in our backyard. Our home became more than walls and furniture. It became a place filled with laughter, with simple traditions we created together. Friday nights meant takeout and old movies. Sunday mornings meant coffee in bed before starting the day. Every holiday, every anniversary felt like a celebration of the life we were building side by side. There were no cracks then, no doubts. I would look at him across the table and think, this is it. This is the man who makes me whole. I remember once while we were watching a storm roll in through the window, David said softly, "No matter what happens out there, as long as we're together, I'll always feel safe." And in that moment, I believed nothing could ever break us. But life has a way of changing when you least expect it. What once felt like balance between David and me slowly began to feel like distance. At first, it was nothing more than little things. I wanted to go out on Friday nights, explore new restaurants, or take last-minute road trips. David preferred quiet evenings at home, a movie, a homemade meal, the comfort of routine. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Couples have differences all the time, right? But slowly, those small differences started to pile up. I remember one evening, I came home bubbling with excitement about a networking event my colleague had invited me to. "It could be huge for my career," I told him. But David just smiled and said, "Why don't you skip it? Let's stay in tonight." His words weren't harsh, but they cut into me in ways I didn't want to admit. It wasn't that David didn't support me. He always said he did. But I began to feel like he was holding me back, keeping me tied down to a life that felt too small for the dreams I carried inside me. The more I craved change, the more his steadiness began to feel like stagnation. His love for the simple things, a home-cooked meal, a walk in the park, a book before bed, once made me feel safe. Now it started to feel like a cage. I caught myself comparing us to other couples who traveled, who went on adventures, who seemed to be chasing life instead of standing still. I began to wonder if I had settled too soon, if perhaps I was outgrowing the man I once believed was my anchor. And the worst part? I never told him how I felt. Instead, I let the frustration build quietly inside me, brick by brick, until it became a wall between us. What once felt like unshakable harmony was now a melody out of tune, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that cracks had begun to form in the life we built together.
As months passed, the small cracks widened into something harder to ignore. What once were quiet differences turned into constant friction. It started with small arguments, things that should have ended in laughter or compromise, but they didn't. I'd suggest a spontaneous weekend getaway, dreaming of watching sunsets on a distant beach. David would sigh and remind me of bills, responsibilities, and how impractical it was. "You never want to do anything new," I snapped once, slamming a cupboard door. "And you never appreciate what we already have," he replied, his voice low, calm, but firm. Those words stung more than I let on. It wasn't just about trips or dinners. It was about something deeper. I wanted to chase excitement, to feel alive in new ways. But David seemed content to live in the quiet repetition of routine. And the more he resisted change, the more I resented him for it. I began staying out later with friends, convincing myself I deserved the fun he denied me. I'd come home to find him waiting, dinner cold on the table, his eyes filled with disappointment he didn't put into words. His silence felt heavier than any argument could have been. And when we did fight, the words cut deeper each time. "You're too controlling, David. I don't need you to manage my life." "And you're never satisfied, Anna. No matter what I do, it's not enough for you." Those nights left us lying back to back in bed, the distance between us growing wider than the mattress itself. I could feel his patience thinning, his steady calm beginning to break under the weight of my restlessness, and deep down, I knew I was pushing him further away each time I lashed out. But pride is a dangerous thing.
Instead of admitting my fears, I let anger speak for me. Instead of reaching for him, I pushed him harder. It was only a matter of time before one of our fights would go too far. And when it did, I never imagined it would cost me everything.
The night it all came crashing down started, like so many others, with something small, something that should have been forgettable. I had found a last-minute travel deal, a weekend trip to the mountains. I was excited, almost childlike, when I brought it to David. "Let's go," I said, shoving my phone in front of him. "We never do anything fun anymore. Just this once. Say yes." He glanced at the screen, then back at me. His expression steady but tired. "Anna, we can't. It's not responsible right now. We have bills. We have plans. You know that." Something inside me snapped. All the built-up frustration, the unspoken resentments, the silent nights, it all erupted in that one moment. "You're so dull, David," I shouted, my voice shaking. "You're stuck in your routine, and I'm sick of it. I don't need you to run my life. I can do this on my own. I don't need you at all." The words rang out like a slap, sharper than I meant, harsher than I ever imagined saying. For a second, I almost expected him to yell back, to fight, to remind me of the love we once shared. But he didn't. Instead, he stood there quietly, his face pale, his eyes wounded in a way I will never forget. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse, he didn't even try to change my mind. "If I'm not needed here," he said softly, his voice almost breaking, "then maybe I shouldn't stay." I froze, staring at him, waiting for the rest of the sentence, the reassurance, the forgiveness, the promise that he would never actually leave. But it never came. He picked up a small bag, calmly gathered a few essentials, and without another word, he walked to the door. No anger, no drama, just quiet finality. And then, with one soft click of the door, he was gone. That silence was louder than any argument we ever had. The moment the door closed, I stood frozen, staring at the empty space where David had been. A part of me waited for his footsteps to return, for the door to swing open, for him to come storming back in with anger on his face and love still hidden underneath. But the house stayed quiet. That night, I lay in bed alone, the sheets cold where his warmth should have been. I reached out in the dark, my hand brushing the emptiness beside me. It was unbearable. The next morning, I expected him to walk back through the door, maybe with an apology, maybe ready to talk. Instead, the hours passed in silence. His phone went straight to voicemail. My texts remained unread. The longer the silence stretched, the more my chest tightened with fear. I tried to distract myself, threw myself into work, surrounded myself with friends, filled my calendar with noise, but nothing filled the void. Coming home was the worst part. The house that once felt alive now felt like a tomb of memories. His favorite mug sat untouched on the kitchen counter. His shoes were missing from the doorway, his laughter, his humming while making coffee, his presence, all gone. Every corner reminded me of him. The couch where we used to curl up together now mocked me with its emptiness. The garden he once tended with care began to wither without his touch. Even the silence seemed cruel, echoing my mistake back at me. You said you didn't need him. Now he's gone. Days turned into weeks. My calls went unanswered. my messages ignored. I left voicemails, my voice trembling, whispering apologies I once thought I'd never need to say. David, I didn't mean it. Please come home. I do need you, more than anything. Please, just call me. But there was only silence. I replayed that night over and over, wishing I could pull the words back into my mouth, erase them, replace them with something softer, something true. Because the truth was, I did need him. I always had. It wasn't until he was gone that I realized how much his quiet strength held me together. His calm wasn't dullness, it was peace. His routines weren't chains. They were the threads of stability that kept our chaotic world from falling apart, and I had thrown it all away with one reckless sentence. Loneliness became my shadow. Every morning I woke up with regret pressing against my chest, and every night I lay in the dark, haunted by the memory of his wounded eyes. I told myself he'd come back eventually, that he just needed time. But deep down I knew. Some wounds cut so deeply that silence becomes the only answer. And his silence was destroying me more than his anger ever could have.
In the weeks that followed, the silence forced me to confront a truth I had been running from for years. I told myself I wanted more out of life, more excitement, more adventure, more freedom. And maybe I did. But in chasing what I thought I was missing, I failed to see what I already had. David wasn't holding me back. He was holding me together. His calm was never meant to cage me. It was meant to steady me. His routines weren't dull. They were proof of his consistency, his loyalty, his unwavering love. But in my pride, I twisted those gifts into flaws. I convinced myself that his steadiness meant stagnation, that his simplicity meant smallness. And by the time I realized the truth, it was too late. One reckless sentence, "I don't need you," had undone years of love, trust, and devotion. I used to believe love was about passion, about big gestures, about constant thrills. But now I understand that real love often looks quieter than that. It's in the small moments, the everyday choices, the steady presence of someone who stands beside you even when the world feels heavy. Losing David taught me the hardest lesson of all. Words are not just words. They can heal, but they can also destroy. And sometimes the things we say in anger are the very things that cost us what we can never replace. I don't know if he'll ever come back. Maybe I've lost him forever. But I know this much. If you are lucky enough to have someone who stands by you, who loves you even in your flaws, never take them for granted. Because once they're gone, you may never get the chance to make it right.
If there's one thing I've learned from losing David, it's that love is fragile. We think the people who stand beside us will always be there, that we can say anything, do anything, and they'll never walk away. But that's a dangerous lie we tell ourselves. The truth is, it only takes one careless moment to shatter what took years to build. One reckless sentence. One thoughtless choice. I live every day with the echo of my own words, "I don't need you." And every time I remember the look in his eyes before he walked out, I feel that echo break me all over again. I don't know where David is now. I don't know if he's happier without me, or if he ever thinks of the life we shared. All I know is that I let pride and frustration speak louder than love,
and that mistake cost me everything. So, if you're listening to this, please don't make the same mistake I did. Look at the people in your life who love you, who stay by your side even when it's hard, and tell them how much they mean to you. Don't wait for silence to remind you of their worth. Don't let your pride destroy the very thing your heart can't live without. If you've ever taken someone for granted, send them a message today. Call them. Hold them close. Tell them you need them. Because love isn't guaranteed forever. And once it's gone, you may never get the chance to bring it back.